What I'd really like to do is do a deep dive and show you how you can take these forms and not only just build forms, how you can build an entire application, a serverless application using nothing but JSON Powered Forms. So the first and foremost is that what Form.io does for you, and I mentioned this before, is it automatically generates this REST API for every form that you create. So automatically when you create a form, you're creating all of the schema for that data, and you don't have to even think about how do I consume that API. The form does it for you. So when I fill out that form, I'm hitting the API, providing all of that data for me, and I don't even have to think about it. We also provide authentication roles and permissions. So we use modern day JWT token authentication, so you can actually create login forms, authentication forms, and have people sign in and authenticate themselves via this platform, and it's very robust. You have roles and permissions. You can assign those roles to different accounts and then attach those to different resources within the platform. With our action system, you can hook a number of actions to a form submission. For those of you who are familiar with Node.js, this entire platform is built on Node.js, and there's one concept in Node.js that really resonated with me whenever I started learning it, which is this concept of middleware. And the concept of middleware basically says that I can create configurable middleware and just stack them on top of each other. And based on how you've configured that middleware, that when that form is submitted, it's basically going to walk down that middleware chain and execute things. So you can stack things like save submission. I can save to another resource. I can send multiple emails by just attaching multiple email actions to the form. I can trigger webhooks. So if you want to integrate this into your other, your own custom platform, you can send a webhook which will trigger another REST API call to your platform. Google Sheets integration, for example, you can hook this up to a spreadsheet. A lot of capabilities here from an action perspective. Enough pictures, enough me saying, hey, this is great. Let's actually get our hands dirty and walk through a real application that would otherwise be very hard to do in a single presentation. An application that involves user authentication. How many of you guys have been to a meetup and all you learn about is how to get somebody to sign in? And I mean, it's because you have to build a lot of stuff. You have to build the API, you have to build the forms. At Form.io, it's all done for you. Whenever you create a new account, this is really what you see as like an intro. Now we have some documentation. It's good documentation. We are going to be updating the docs because there's just a lot to this platform. But then there's another thing that I'd like to direct your attention to, which is these applications, these pre-built applications. You can start with the default. There's this thing called Service Tracker. We're going to be focusing on Service Tracker because that app really illustrates the complexities of multiple people logging in. They need to see different things, nested resources. All of that is provided in the Service Tracker. But any one of these you can just click on. So if I just click on any one of those, what that does is that creates the project for you. I actually get my own API endpoint that you see right here. This API endpoint allows me to really consume the resources that I just built. If we go over to resources, you'll see that we have a number of resources that have been created for me. Let's talk a little bit about resources. Resources are database objects. And in Form.io, you're really talking about objects, okay? Think a little bit like database tables without all the joining, okay? This is real objects. So if in your application, if you have dealers, you would create a dealer resource. If you have customers, you would create a customer resource. And all of these are full objects that give you all the information about that. So for example, customer. If I click on customer, this actually takes me to a form. I'm building resources with a form. That's actually somewhat unique. You won't find any other platform where you're actually using a form builder to actually build the resource. But in a way, it makes sense. If you can build a form that would be able to create a resource, you've basically given me all the information I need to build the APIs. Let's say I wanted to add middle name to my primary contact information. I just drag and drop that here. You've already seen this because I showed you our open source form builder. But this is our open source form builder. It's just embedded into our product. So all of this you can actually do pretty easily. And I can provide the custom path. I've got all of those same components that I have. One thing that is new that Form.io provides you is this concept of existing resource fields. So you can build existing objects and then drag those back onto your system so you can reuse components within other forms. This makes it easy if you want to offload the form building to other people and you already have these predefined objects and say, hey, listen, if you want a customer, drag and drop the customer object onto your form and it just populates all of the fields for you. It's pretty handy. So once you've actually built that form, you essentially at that point have the entire schema and API developed for you. Now, one thing I want to show you is that you see this endpoint here. Now, this is localhost because I'm on my local machine. You guys would see this is at Form.io. But if I click on that, I've essentially got this API Explorer that shows me all of my APIs within my platform. And this is using Swagger.io. And as you can see, by just building forms, I am building my entire API platform, building it for me. And it's a very robust API platform. And if I actually click on one of those, so if I go right here and then I copy that and paste this in the URL, I see JSON. And so if you think about what's going on here, the renderer, when you pass this form to the renderer, what it does is it loads the JSON schema. It generates the form. But that same JSON schema builds the API for the submission. So everything's connected for you and you don't even have to think about it. So once I have a number of resources created, I can also create nestings of resources. So in this application, I'm going to show you what the app looks like here in a minute. You're going to have dealers, and dealers have contractors. And this is a service tracker application, so it'd probably help if I told you what this app is. This application allows dealers of people that have like HVAC equipment. And so let's think about HVAC equipment, and they have a number of contractors that need to go out and service these HVAC equipment. And so they have customers, and these customers have equipment. And these people who are servicing they're out in the field, and they need a tablet interface to say, okay, I did this work on this HVAC equipment, okay? And so it's essentially a dealer you would set up with just very, very minimal information here. But let's look at customer, and you'll see something in customer that's interesting. You'll see a reference to dealer. This is actually a special component called resource component. And I dragged and dropped that on there, and that actually creates this relationship, this one-to-many relationship. So now dealers can have many different customers because each customer I create, I would essentially assign that customer to a dealer. Let's say you wanted a many-to-many relationship. Inside of the actual component, I can click on Allow Multiple Resources, and that turns it into a multi-select where I can select multiple, and that turns it into a many-to-many relationship. Something that would be fairly difficult to build from an API perspective. It's real easy. As long as you can build the form, you can build the API. So I think you guys get the point as far as resources is concerned. Let's take a look at forms. So forms would be stuff like customer surveys, contractor logins, service agreements, some of these things that would be supplementing the resource information. So like survey. I wouldn't have a data object called survey, customer survey, because I'm asking things like how was your service, and that's not really a data object item that I would put on the data object. So forms actually serve to supplement the form for existing resources. So I can build forms, I can build resources, then I can relate them together. I am going to have to log into form.io though, because this is not pulling in the latest updates that I've just released. So let's actually look inside. So this is one that I created before I came here. So this is essentially this customer survey, service agreement. This also shows you that we have WYSIWYG editors. Here's our, so I can do some pretty complex WYSIWYG editing here. I've got e-signatures. If I preview that, it's really fast. So this will actually capture an e-signature. You can use your finger to do it. So all of that's available. Okay, so we know resources, we know forms. How does all this come together? All of this comes together in this section, which is the preview section. This actually shows you what the application would look like. And so immediately what you see is this is an application that's running and it has a login screen. This login form is actually the login form that you see here. This is user login. So let's say, just to show you how this works, I could actually drag and drop an item here, save that form, go back to my preview, and it'll actually render the new field onto the form. It's dynamically rendering the form. Here's another important takeaway on this. Let's say this is an app that you've already deployed to millions of devices, and you need to add a field. Historically, you would have to recompile the app to add that field into your application. With Form.io, because everything's using that one directive, that Form.io directive, it grabs the form dynamically and renders it dynamically, so everything is automatically included. Let me go back to that form and delete that field. So another thing is you're probably thinking, okay, what happens when I submit that? How does that know to log me in? Like, how does that work? Well, everything that happens after you submit a form takes place in actions. And it just so happens that we have an action called login. And login is a special action that allows me to authenticate against multiple resources. So think of resources as your database, but you can authenticate against multiple of them. So I can authenticate using a single login. I can say authenticate against the dealer, authenticate against a contractor, and allow all of them to have essentially a login. And then I provide a username field, a password field, and then I can do some stuff like conditions, like execute this only if this field item is a certain value. You can do stuff like that. I could also send, let's say I wanted to send an email every time somebody logged in. So things that would normally be complicated, that you should have to build in your backend, is actually pretty easy. I can just say, send an email, and I could tell who to send it to. This actually uses Nunjux. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Nunjux templating language. This uses Nunjux, so you can really build some complex emails. You can use email templates and essentially send an email if somebody logs in. And if somebody logged in, you would actually get an email, hey, somebody just logged in. So it's all middleware. So once we actually have this application, one thing that a lot of people get hung up on, and I want to make sure I talk about this, because if you guys go home and try this, you'll probably get frustrated. We're working on our documentation to help this, but a lot of people try to use their Form.io email and password in the login of the app, expecting that to work. It won't, and the reason is because this is authenticating against a separate database resource, and so that it's not going to find that person. And so if you try to type your Form.io login credentials, it's not going to work. What you actually have to do to log into the app is you have to create an initial record, and you do that under Forms. So under Forms, let me go and create a dealer record. In fact, I think I've already done that. But you just go to Forms, and you can actually fill out the preview form and hit Submit. And what that will do is that'll actually create a data entry. Oh, it didn't actually, so let me actually create one. So let me just, I thought I did this before I came, but. So I am creating a dealer record. I provide my password, and I hit Submit. And what that does is that actually, in the data, that actually created a record in this app. And that's important to note because your app is isolated from Form.io. It's using like separate data resources. And this actually becomes your database, your user table. Okay? So now inside of the application, I can sign in as a dealer. And what that does is that actually generated a JWT token where here's my information right here, and now I can actually go and I can create new contractors, I can create new customers. I essentially have capabilities to do anything that a dealer would normally do. And actually, I think I know why I didn't find it, is because I actually created an admin record. Oh, Travis admin, okay. So I can actually log in as an admin and have full admin access to the app. And so now that gets me into roles, role assignments. So whenever I'm talking about I'm logging in as an admin, what access you get is really based on the roles section. So inside of a project, you really have the capability to create a number of roles that give you certain access to certain things. So inside of the Service Tracker application, I actually have the contractor and dealer, but I also have an administrator. We create three of them for you, administrator, anonymous, and authenticated. And let's talk about how you're assigned a role to begin with. The way you're assigned a role is if you actually click on resources, there are actions attached to all of the user-based resources. So like dealer is one. If I go click on actions there, you'll see a couple of actions that are getting attached. And if we actually walk through this like middleware, you can see what's going on here. The very first action is it's going to save the submission. I know that seems obvious, like of course it's going to save the submission. Why do you have that as a separate action? Well, when you log in, it's not saving anything, it's just authenticating. So you have to be explicit about what you want that form to do. If I deleted all these actions, the form would literally do nothing. So I am saving the submission. I'm saving the submission to this form. That's pretty self-explanatory. I'm also doing a role assignment. So anytime that I insert a new dealer into this resource, I'm giving them that role that I set up in the roles section. And then I'm also sending an email. I'm saying, hey, we have a new dealer. So this actually will send an email to that dealer saying, hey, you've been added to the system. And you'll notice that happens on customers don't have logins, but the customers could have logins. But contractors have logins. So right here we're assigning the contractor resource. Okay, so that's how they're assigned the role. How do you tell them what access they have? Well, that's done inside the access section. So let's talk about customers. Dealers should have access to customers. Contractors should have access to customers. So if you click on the access section, you'll see really how this works. From a resource perspective, I can tell it who should have access to do what in this resource, and basically assign certain roles and permissions based on all of the CRUD operations. So create all, read all, update all, delete all, as well as create own, read own, update own, delete own. And then I can also do permissions based on association. So this is a great example of if I assign a contractor to a customer, they should have access to that customer. But no other contractor should have access to that customer. So you could actually do that. I could say, or like dealer, I could say if the dealer has been assigned, then only that dealer should have admin access to this customer. So that's how they're assigned roles and permissions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the remaining 15 minutes and show you how we can get this on our local machine and how we can spin this up locally, because this app is open source and you can find this on GitHub. The place you go is this launch section. And so the launch section allows you to do a couple of things. You can launch a single form. Single form is pretty cool. You can say, let's say you just want to build a form and you just want people to fill out this form and collect the data from it. You can actually, so like let's say you wanted your customer survey to be a form. You can actually click launch here. And this allows you to take this form and get a URL. In fact, I can even select a theme, so I can make it, we can make it different themes, like Cosmo theme. I can make it dark. And then I can actually then click on this link right here and navigate to it. And from a public perspective, be able to fill out that form. So that's launching a single form. And a lot of people, when they see Form.io, they think this is what we are. They think we're just forms and that you can do public forms. We can do public forms. There you go. But we're so much more than that. And where we're so much more than that is the different type of deployment mechanisms we can have. So not only can you launch a single form, but you can also build the entire application and do so with this local app development. So right here, it gives you the repo. So if you click on launch and click on local app development, right away you see that we have this service tracker link here. So I'm just going to go open this link in a new window. And so right here is the service tracker application. It's entirely open source. This is an AngularJS application. Let's actually walk through this a little bit, just so I can show you how this is structured. This was actually built using Yeoman. This actually started off as a Yeoman generator. I don't know if you guys have done anything with Yeoman generators, but we use the Yeoman Angular Gulp generator to do this because we like Gulp versus Grunt. So everything that you're going to find is inside the source folder. And I think it's important for me to kind of walk through the structure of how this is built, this application that you're seeing is built, because I think what you're going to find is that there's surprisingly not a lot of code. So we are able to build this entire application with very minimal code because we have a number of helpers that allow you to pull in those resources, consume it. So inside the source folder, the very first file that's important is this config.js file. The config.js file is really utilized to tell really all of your configurations. So here's your forms that you want to pull into the application. So here's my appointment form, user login forms. This is really the URL to the forms within the system. Let me see if I can increase the size there. That's much better. Roles. This roles array tells the application what roles you want to have access to within the app. So we have helper, and the helper will, based on how you've logged in, give you access to an is contractor variable or an is dealer. And you can use that, and whenever they log in, it automatically sets that. So then in the app, you can do a bunch of ng ifs. And I'll show you some. Ng if is contractor. Ng if is dealer. Then we have a series of resources. And really at this point, this is pretty repetitive. I can go in here and just define all of my form URLs and then a class name for all of my resources. Everything we do in Form.io is resource-based. What do these map to? Because that's the next really important thing. Inside of the source folder, you'll see this app folder. If we click on that, there's this folder called resources. That config array of resources maps to these, and these are essentially resource classes. And these adhere to a structure defined by our helpers. And whenever I open this, you're going to see that it's fairly simple. Let's do customer, because customer has a parent resource of dealer. If I click on that, you'll see that all we have to do is we have to do a provider. Here's the name of it, the customer resource. You saw that in the config. And then at that point, we just provide the base. This is the UI router base. So at dealer.customer, I'm going to get all of the index for this customer. I just provide the parent item. What this does is this tells it the ID of the field within the customer. So inside of the customer, we had a dealer field, and that actually assigns it. And then at that point, I can define custom templates. The helper will define and provide you default templates. And those default templates really give you a data grid in the index, a create, which is the form, a view, which is a read-only form of it already submitted, an edit where you can edit the data, and a delete. So all your CRUD operations are taken care of. And then I can provide custom parameters for each of those operations. And then at that point, I can provide custom controllers. So like right here, one interesting thing, and I'll show you inside the application, I have maps, a mapping that actually takes the customer's address and it loads a map, and it shows the map inside the application. So that'll actually show you how that works. I can also trigger whenever form submissions have been made. So I could actually do some custom things as they fill out the form. So every single one of these is, about 80 lines long. Some of it is very boilerplate. And so like dealer equipment. So equipment is actually just, this is actually the default object there. And then at that point, if I go into my app folder, the only other things that I really need to do is inside of the configuration, I just need to initialize certain things within my application. So inside of the Formio provider, I need to provide the base app URL and as well as the API URL. And then I provide in the Formio auth provider. That does all my authentication for me. It handles everything for me. I just tell it, hey, I'm providing a user login here. If they're logged in, if they're not logged in, I want them to go to auth login. If they are logged in, I want them to go to home. I'm forcing them to be authenticated. They can't navigate anywhere on the app unless they're authenticated. And then I'm also registering the login page here. And then at that point, all I'm doing is providing 2 additional states. So the app I'm about to show you, it's going to be hard to believe that all I really had to declare is 2 states in this entire application. Because this entire app is basically, it runs on its own. I'll walk through it and show it to you. And then all of this is just copy and paste. This is a boilerplate registration of the application. And then, of course, I wanted customers to be able to fill out their forms in the application. We have a Formio Forms provider that does that, where you can register and say, okay, these are customer forms. And I can provide the fields and everything. So that kind of gives you an idea of the structure of the config. For the module declaration, all I'm doing here is just defining my dependencies. You do have to declare a form.io dependency as well as a form.io helper. The form.io helper is what gives you the auth provider, the resource provider, and everything. And then inside of the run.js is like quite literally 5 lines of code. You're initializing the auth provider, and then I'm setting the config so I can use it elsewhere within the app. And then right here, I'm iterating through those forms that I've declared in the configuration, and I'm providing them to the root scope so that inside of my directives, inside of my templates, I can actually view the forms. Let me show you what it looks like to view one of those forms. So inside of the login form, looks like this. So it's a single line of code to show the login form in my application. So versus having to build the form, hook it up to an API, typically you would have to build a lot of code to make this work. Form.io really makes it easy. You can just say Form.io source. It works like an image tag. So if you can embed an image in your application, you can embed a fully working form from Form.io, and that's what that looks like. So hopefully you've got a little bit of an idea of the structure of the application. Let me show you what this application looks like whenever you run it. So again, you can actually run it by going to this preview here. And one thing you can do is there's this little icon in the far top, it's hard to see, this icon in the far top right-hand corner. If I click on that, that'll actually pop this application out so that you can see what this application looks like. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to log in as the admin here. Once I'm logged in as the admin, I'm going to go create, really the admin has the ability to create dealers. And as you can see, I've already created the one dealer. This is done for me. I didn't have to hook up this API. This is a data grid that the helper provides for me. When I'm talking about this helper, I think it's also important to kind of show you what that code and where it looks like. Because another big question that people ask me is like, I don't know where to go to find where this is happening. Like, where did that happen? If I go, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to open up my WebStorm. And I'm going to show you what this application looks like. All right, so inside here, right here, I'm inside the application, and this is the app that I just showed you. So I have my app folder, my views folder. The Formio helper is really important, and that's a Bower component, and it's under ng Formio helper. And inside of here, what you'll see is this actually, if I open this up, what this is really doing is when you register a resource, you're really registering all of the states. What it's doing is it's registering the index, the get, the create, the edit, the delete. All of those indexes it's registering for you. It's building the controllers for you. It's hooking into your custom controller so that you can also supplement what it's doing. That's what that's doing right there. So all of these states are being generated for you by the helper. But one thing that it's also important to look at are the templates. Inside the templates, you'll see this resource. And inside resource, you'll see all of these templates are provided for you. So like here's the index. The index is using another UI grid element called Formio grid. So let's say that I wanted to, on this page, customize it and customize the index page. I would quite literally copy this file, index, go to views, and what are we on? We're on the dealer. This is the dealer index. I go to dealer, and I paste the index right there. And then now I've got a copy of it, and I can do whatever I want in here and modify whatever I want. And now I just need to register that within the resource provider. So inside the resource provider, I have this dealer here. I now need to register that custom view as views dealer index. And by doing that, I've essentially overridden what the helper is trying to do for me. We did this helper thing to really try and make it easy for you guys to get up and going really quick, and like all of the things are working. So in this case, we have an index, and you see it's a new dealer. I click on that. We now see a Form.io form. That rendered the dealer resource. So let me actually create a new dealer. So a new, we'll just call this Form.io. Form.io at Form.io. So once I've created a new dealer, what you're going to see now is you're going to see some of the nested resources. Something that would really be difficult if you weren't using a platform like Form.io. Like for example, here's the view, but I have a list of customers for that dealer. I can create a new customer, and you notice I don't see the dealer field because the dealer field is being auto-populated and hidden in this form. And so let me do an address real quick. This is pulling from Google Maps API. So that's pretty cool. And when I hit submit, now I'm in a new view. There's my map. But look at this. Now this is even more cool. We got nesting within nesting, but it all is easy. I showed you how much code was in this application. It was hardly anything. I've got equipment. So this customer needs new equipment. Let me submit multiple here. So I've got that equipment. Let me do some more equipment. I've also got appointments. So if I want to create a new appointment for this customer, I could just say new appointment. I need to assign a contractor. Oh, I need a contractor. So let me go create a contractor. So up here, I'm going to create a contractor for this. And I'm just going to call this contractor, because I'm going to log in as the contractor and show you what all this looks like. So now I've got a contractor. I'm going to assign that contractor a new appointment. So I'm going to assign him an appointment inside of this customer. New appointment, new contractor. I've got a date select field here and hit submit. Now that contractor will have access to this information. And guess what? I'm in an appointment. Appointments have services. I have a time clock. So as a time clock, this is cool. This actually tracks their GPS coordinates as they did it. So right there, I now get a GPS location as I did a new time clock, and I can submit multiple of these. So there's that one. I can do another one. Essentially, we've built a pretty complex platform with, I would say, probably 100 lines of code. So let me actually go log in as this dealer. So what's the name of this dealer? He's, I think it was Form.io. So Form.io at Form.io. And this will show you how we have roles and permissions. And the roles and permissions allow you to control what they see. So this looks different. I only see my customers. These are my customers. This is my contractor. Let me log in as a contractor and show you what he sees. What is that contractor at Form.io? That contractor can only see what his appointments are. Oh, there it is. He's got his appointment that he needs to go look at. Let me go check that out. Okay, if that's that customer, okay, yeah, I'm going to go do some service on them. I'm going to do service performed. So they just did some. Perform some service. They're also going to do a time clock entry. He's not seeing the time clock entry because he did not submit the previous ones. That's why he didn't see those. But he will see, if he submitted it, the ones that he submitted, because he only has access to the ones that he did. So now in his time clock, he now sees that at that time he's now got his appointment. And equipment, I can see all of their equipment. But hopefully what you guys can see here is that with very minimal amount of effort, just by building forms, building resources, assigning them, kind of jiggering them, very minimal amount of code, I'm able to generate a very complex data management application, and all of it is managed within the Form.io platform. So I can go into my Form.io platform and see all of the time clocks that were just generated from a data perspective, and to be able to report on it, export it, feed that into my other external system pretty easily. So JSON Powered Forms with an API platform combined creates a very amazing platform, and I hope you guys try it yourself. So that's it for me, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and thank you so much.
Thank you.